Welcome, families. If you're just joining us, we'll get started in one more minute, just having folks file in from the waiting room. All right, families, let's get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Fall Family Welcome, part of our family webinar series. My name is Camille Clark, and I'm the Associate Director for Family Engagement. I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight and supporting our Eagles. We're thrilled to welcome you in advance of Family Weekend, and whether you're joining us in person or taking part in virtual events, we are so thankful to have your presence. Tonight's webinar will introduce you to Raymond Ou, our panelist for this evening, who is our Vice President of Student Affairs. I won't steal Raymond's thunder. I know he has a slide introducing himself soon, but I will share with you that student well-being is at the core of his work. So before we get started, I do have a couple of notes for you. The first is that the webinar is being recorded, and we'll share the recording with you just as soon as it's available. The second is that we will reserve time at the end of the webinar for a Q&A facilitated by our Director of Family Engagement, Karen Casella, but you are welcome to ask a question anytime using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I am going to let Raymond O take it away.
Thank you so much, Camille. Everyone, it is such a pleasure for me to say hello to all of you and to greet you in person, of course, in a webinar fashion. My name is Raymond Ou, and I have the pleasure and the privilege of being the Vice President for Student Affairs at American University, a role that I have held since July 5th. And I'm particularly excited tonight because it's one of my first formal opportunities to see all of you, but I've also met many of you during move-in. I was one of a few folks who were probably welcoming you as you were moving in your student. And I also met many of you when the president, Sylvia Burbois, and I did a lot of the meet and greets, and we saw many of you in the residence halls, and that was such a pleasure. So it's wonderful for us to be able to continue the conversation. And I wanted to go over a couple of the objectives that I have this evening for us. But before doing so, I want to just thank Camille Clark, Julia Gibson, and of course, Karen Casella, and our captioner for making this webinar possible. A lot of work goes on behind the scenes to make these things happen. And so I really appreciate all that you have done and all that you will be doing through Family Weekend coming up. So what I would like to target this evening are some topics that may be near and dear to you. They certainly are near and dear to me. And they have to do with mental health and well-being. Of course, that's a topic, and we received a number of questions related to that. And in addition to that, student support in general. How does your student receive that support? Whether they're in the residence halls, whether they're a graduate student, or if they are a student who has taken some time off. So we support every student at AU, and that's part of our mission. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. A third topic, belonging and engagement. Does your student feel like they're part of the community? And how do we ensure that we support them through this journey that they have? And also the last topic are some new developments that we have in student affairs that I'm particularly excited about. And then, of course, we're going to conclude with question and answer. And one of my trademarks is that, at least I think it's a trademark, is I try to be as authentic as possible. And I try to be as candid as possible because I feel that's the best way to build trust with families. So given that I've been here since July 5th, there might be questions and answers that I don't know the answers to, but please be sure that we will respond to you. And there will be plenty of opportunities for us. And you can also always email at rou@american.edu AU. I do check that email address regularly, so feel free to email me as well if you have any specific questions. So next, I wanted to actually talk a bit about myself, even though as I often joke, I've worked through most of my narcissism in my 20s, so I don't actually like to talk about myself. But the reason that I want to share a bit about who I am is because in over 25 years of being in the field, one of the things that I have discovered is parents and families really appreciate knowing who it is that is working with their student, why they're here, and where they're from. So very quickly about my background. Originally, I grew up in Taiwan, so Taipei, Taiwan, originally from there. And my parents are still there, extended family is still there. But when I was about 10 years old, my family immigrated to the United States. And of all places, we settled in Gastonia, North Carolina. So I have both the identity of being Taiwanese as well as being a Southerner, if you can believe it. And because I've been in the United States since I was 10 and I'm almost 49, I am 49 now, being a US citizen is really all that I've known, but I am bilingual. I speak both Mandarin as well as English, and that comes in very handy sometimes working with our students. And a couple of additional things about my background. In addition to that, the interesting thing is that I've had the pleasure of working on different university campuses. For instance, before coming to AU, I was the vice president of student affairs at Brandeis University. And prior to that, I was at Tufts University and also Simmons University and a few years at Yale College as well. And I share that because I hope that I bring those perspectives in what I do every day at AU. And that takes me to why I came into student affairs. Like many of us working in student affairs, I believe that it's a higher calling. It's not an accident that I fell into this. I will just share with you that I remember my first year as a first-year student. And my alma mater was the Peabody Conservatory at Johns Hopkins University, so down the road in Baltimore, Maryland. And I remember that it took at least 6 months for me to really get a good sense of both Peabody and Johns Hopkins University. And it was my resident advisor and my dean of students at Peabody Conservatory that introduced me to many of the things on campus, both at Peabody and at the main university of Johns Hopkins University. And that truly saved my life. So I started wanting to be a classical musician, but fortunately, I found my true calling, which was counseling psychology, supporting students, because I had wonderful mentors, RAs and student advisors and orientation leaders to support me. And I thought, wow, if I can actually make a living and be a professional, work with students all day, that's what I would do. So I went back to school. I got a second master's degree in clinical counseling. And most recently, I finished my doctorate in education with a concentration in organizational leadership. So my motivation for working with your student to serving your student comes from the fact that I know what it's like to not feel like I belong, whether it's in a room, at an institution, or university. And I also know what it can mean when the route you take to your eventual professional craft, your professional journey, isn't always a straight line. And because of those elements, it's all the more important that we as student affairs professionals love what we do, are not scared of students, are energized by students, and are rejuvenized and inspired by all the things that they will encounter as they go through their experience. And so it's with that lens that I love working with graduate and undergraduate students, both on campus and off campus. And that takes me to how I think about families. When I came into the field, what I was struck by was some of the most rewarding relationships I made were certainly with students, but most definitely with families. Because families care a great deal. Whether your student is a graduate student or undergraduate student, as human beings, we all need a social network of support. And that universality has made it possible for me to connect directly with families. So I've talked to aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, sometimes sons and daughters of students as well in what I do. And that has been a privilege because we see our connection with families and loved ones as part of a partnership. So while we always champion that a student at AU is here because they want to flourish, and part of flourishing is gaining that independence, we always think of you, those of you watching me right now, as partners in that. So it is that philosophy that I hope I will convey through this webinar this evening. And I conclude with a quick introduction with what advice would I give. The reason I conclude this with the introduction is I always get asked that question, whether from a graduate, a student, or a family member, or undergraduate student on campus and off. So in general, what I would say is trust that you know your student better than almost anybody in the world. That's one of the first things. And that it is because you care that you're on this webinar or that you're reaching out to them. However, also recognize that this is a very exciting and sometimes stressful time for your student. Therefore, when you connect with them, it is a snapshot, whether there's a text message or a phone call, of how they're doing at that time. So at 8 a.m., they may hate their roommate. By 8 p.m., they may still have feelings about their roommate, but they don't hate them as much, and they're about to go to a choir rehearsal and they're fine. So what are you worried about? So I use that as an example of just knowing that it's fast-paced at AU and things happen quickly. We want you to be a part of that journey, but the advice that I have for you is know that it is because you care that you're reaching out to your student, and recognize that when you connect with them, it's a snapshot and lots of things may happen. And the final thing is ask questions like I know you will tonight, because you deserve to know who is supporting your students and who will be there when you're not there physically. That's where I come in. That's where Karen, Julia, Camille, and others come in. So trust that we are here, but ask probing questions. Challenge us if you are concerned about something, because we are here as part of that partnership. So that's the one piece of advice that I would have give to you. But actually, as I wrap that up, I think there's actually a second advice that I would give to you, which is, I know it sounds fun, it sounds funny, and also maybe too simplistic. Encourage your student to have fun. I know that sounds strange, maybe especially coming from student affairs, but we've just gone through the global pandemic and it's not over yet, right? However, we are all privileged that most of us have access to vaccines and health and other things, and we are all thrilled to be back together physically. Encourage them to have a good time and take part and enjoy all the resources we have at AU. So that's a quick introduction of what I do, and now I'm going to go into more of the content. When we think about student affairs, often what comes up is mental health and well-being for individuals. And I'm sure you are no exception and you are not alone. The reason that, by the way, I put this together myself, the fact that I could get circles to line up itself is a miracle of engineering, because I am not a particularly tech person. So I hope you love this very beautiful picture here. But the way we think about health and well-being and mental health and well-being is not one-dimensional. And I say that from my clinical lens as a trained clinician, because in my experience, both inside the therapy room and outside the therapy room is the following. It is through a holistic lens and holistic development that your student can achieve optimal mental and physical health. So while we focus definitely on clinical resources, we also do a lot of prevention work upfront to make sure that your student is getting enough sleep, they're getting the nutrition that they need. Yes, they're getting exercise, and there are other dimensions, the social dimension, financially, are they secure? And emotionally, are they managing their relationships with others? Spiritual, how are they connecting with others related to topics that the Case Spiritual Center, for example, present, those larger questions, and also intellectual, of course. But I like to share this slide because as much as I do want to make sure that we focus on mental health, I also want you to know that we're thinking about things holistically. And I know Karen and we were having a conversation earlier today about some of the questions that families may have. I know one of the questions that I get every year is, how does your institution mental health related concerns compare to other institutions? And I'm here to tell you that AU is right there tracking with what the national averages are related to mental health concerns. Now, I share that for context, but we also know both nationally and globally, mental health is a very important topic, and that we are seeing higher rates of depression, anxiety, and other concerns. I want to name that because it's important to you and for us to explain to you all the ways in which we want to support our student. In the next slide, we'll begin to go into some of those details. So for the student network, part of what we have in mental health support is also what you see here, because mental health is related to every one of these topics. And I'm going to go through them each one deliberately so that you see the ways in which we holistically support your student. When I say the care network, that little positive sign there, care network, that means that we think about it in an ecosystem of care. So it's not one person nor one office. It's a network of support individuals. That actually starts with your student. Right from the beginning, we encourage students through orientation to build relationships, because when students are not doing well, some of the most powerful ways in which the community can support them is by peer support. So that's part of the care network. In addition to that, members of my team, as well as academic affairs, monitor how students are doing. And we have something called care reports that individuals in the community can submit, and our office will reach out thoughtfully in a discreet manner to make sure that your student is doing okay. So we do both things behind the scenes that you don't see, as well as proactive ways in which we make sure your student recognizes all the resources, whether it's tutoring or advising, or they want to talk to a major. All of those are wrapped up into the care network. Also, the care network intersects with the academic progress, because we know that the seamless integration of academic and student affairs is what creates synergy for your student. So that is another way in which we make sure that there are those wraparound services related to that. The third element here, threat assessment, that's a very general term. We know that we live in a very complicated world. So we are in lockstep with whatever AUPD and other law enforcement officials are advising us when it comes to keeping your student safe on campus. And so I want you to know that despite the fact that we do all of these things to make sure that your student has support, we also know that physical safety is very important. So that's why we connect regularly with Phil Morse, the chief of police here. And we also engage in a number of things to make sure, for instance, in the residence halls, we have a security company that monitors our residence halls to make sure that security and safety related issues are addressed right away. And of course, our safety scope and monitoring also extends to nearby areas off campus as well. So that's another way in which we offer the type of student support. Final thing I've already referred to, but I think it's very important to mention, something that I noticed right away about AU when interview this past March was not only were the people very professional, but they're genuinely caring individuals. And I hope you sense this when you were on campus, whether it's with your grad or undergrad student. We try to build and reinforce a culture of support for one another here. Therefore, that really encapsulates part of the care network, academic progress, and also identifying any threats to the community. It's a collective goal that we support one another, and we also try to inculcate some of those values with our students because it's part of what we want them to be as change makers. It is very important that you know how you receive and give support to the community. Next slide, please. So some ways in which we want to make sure that you get a better understanding of how my division supports your students' well-being is also, we know the importance of belonging, feeling like you're part of a community, and engagement, how your student is interacting with resources, expending the energy and time into their academics, into their social life, into having fun. Yes, all of those things, because belonging and engagement are those higher order things that after you talk about the safety, nutrition, wellness, we want them to transcend the basics to be fully realized holistic human beings. And that's where my division comes in with many of the things that support what's happening inside the classroom. For example, many student organizations and affinity groups and orientation cohorts exist on different campuses. These are tried and true ways to make sure that your student has a touch point and feel belong to groups along the way. So right from the beginning, orientation leaders through Karen's group shepherded your student through the orientation Eagle Summit experience, and that's all very critical. In addition to that, we also have affinity groups to make sure that students feel that sense of belonging that may transcend orientation leadership groups. Also, I know that every student here wants to be the next United States president, and that's fantastic. They start by being the president or the vice president of, or the secretary for that matter, for their student organization. So those are fantastic ways for them to be engaged in the community. And what I would also say to everyone here is encourage your students to explore those opportunities. However, also encourage them to pace themselves. They don't have to join every single organization or be the president of every single organization. It's important the quality of their experiences, not just the quantity of their experience. So we talked a bit about student leadership because that's part of being change makers. Some of the organizations that I meet with regularly include the AUSG, the Student Government, as well as the Graduate Leadership Council. Those are some of the ways in which your student can be involved on campus. And I love this because I love the fact that AU students have a lot of opinions and they want me to know it. And so when we actually have conversations and meet, I love getting their ideas. Also, the added element here is when your student leaves AU, they're going to have to talk to others in organizations to make change happen. So this is part of their vision. So we want them to not only make a difference here, but learn those vital skills. Just writing me an email, setting up a meeting, and then for me to maybe facilitate a conversation with the president or others on the cabinet, those are experiences that I know helped me as a student leader years ago, and I know will also help your student as they think about how to make the world at AU, the microcosm here for the better, and also the world beyond better. Another way for students to feel a sense of belonging is the residence hall communities. And I mentioned this specifically for our undergraduate students who are living on campus. We know what the research tells us about student retention and engagement. Students who live on campus tend to have higher retention rates and engagement. It's not only the proximity to resources and other students, it is because when they're on campus, there is that built-in community that is supported by the fact that they're co-located and resources are also around. So residence hall communities is another way that we build belonging. And some of the ways, I'll talk about that in the future, is also how to build the wider community for off-campus students. So I'll talk about that a little bit. And the final point here is a very important point as well. I often will talk to families and students that we are here at AU to make sure the infrastructure, the personnel, the resources foster student engagement. In other words, we're not just waiting for you to do all the work. We're here to build the infrastructure. So when you are here, hopefully you feel that energy momentum to sweep you up so that you are engaged and you feel a sense of belonging and that it's time well spent. However, we also need you, the student, and family members to contribute your time and energy, because how much you put into it often has a proportional reaction to what you get out of it. And I say that because it is the marriage of those forces that make things happen. So I would encourage you, as you're working with your student, to encourage them. You'll be surprised at how responsive we are. And you'll also be surprised that if you call us on something that we could do better, we'll try, and we'll also respond to you to give you an update. The next slide, please. And by the way, I'm doing this webinar, and I hope you're having fun. I'm having fun so far. If you hear a little squeaking and noise in the background, it's because I got a new puppy. His name is Ori, because I thought it would be fun to name him Ori O. My last name is O. So he is squeaking right now because he wants my attention. So apologies if you hear little noises in the back. So new developments on the horizon. This is what I live for, is being able to initiate change that is positive for students. I wanted to mention something that is something that we're working on the President's Cabinet. We have this beautiful property in Virginia that's about an hour away, and it is in rural Virginia, and there's a beautiful conference center there. We are thinking about ways to make sure that our students get to take advantage of those spaces and be able to foster additional engagement and community, a sense of belonging there. So that is something new that we are working on that we're very excited about. Next is the Student Thriving Complex. If you came to visit the campus and you stopped in what we call the MGC, we love acronyms, it's the Mary Gordon Center. That's where the Student Hub is. The MGC will be going under renovation within the next 6 months, beginning in January, because we're renovating the second and third floor and building onto it. So we increase the amount of student engagement spaces on campus. So that is something very exciting. And it's also another way that we make sure we are building the holistic development of students, because it will be the physical manifestation of the thriving idea. So for instance, we will co-locate the health center, the counseling center, and also academic support all in the same location, because it's all interrelated and should be integrated. So we are thrilled and very excited about that. And also the residential campus experience after COVID, we are looking at not necessarily the number of programs we have. After COVID, I think we saw that some of our engagement numbers went down because students we're used to not interacting with one another. So something that we are looking for residential students and also off-campus student, this is what I was talking about, is what are some university-wide events that all students can participate in? Because our students have been so used to being in their silos due to COVID, I think there's now an enthusiasm for new programming. So what I've been telling my team and students is, if you go on Engage, our engagement platform for student activities, there's always something going on every night. So what we're trying to do isn't to add 18 more programs. What we want to do is make sure the quality of the programs that we have is high impact, that's energizing, and pushes your student out of their comfort zone in the best way so they'll grow. So there are lots of events that we are also wanting to make sure that we build a type of community around the university. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation, if you will, and I hope that you found that helpful. I hope you were able to get a sense of who I am and my personality. And again, if there are things that you would like to ask me questions about or that you're curious about, feel free to reach out to me and the team here. But we're here to answer your questions. And I will now turn it over to Karen Casella so that she can facilitate the next part of the conversation.
Greetings all. Thank you, Raymond. And for those of you who aren't familiar with campus, right behind Julia's head, that's the Mary Graydon Center that Raymond was talking about renovating. Look at that. So stay tuned for more exciting things to come. Thanks, Raymond. I've got a couple questions to get us started, but we did get a question from Jeffrey in chat. And he was asking, and I was curious how you might answer this too. You know, how are we encouraging our students to participate in all these activities? Particularly, I hear from parents a lot about their students who are introverted or dealing with social anxiety. Like, what's the advice? And especially, what does the parent do from hundreds of miles away when they get those calls? How can they help to support their student as well?
Boy, that's an excellent question. What I would say is the first thing that I would like families to know is whether your student is on campus or off. We do have a number of student affairs and academic affairs professionals who are there poised ready to help facilitate so that your student is able to socialize and interact with others. And so that's the first thing, is to know that there are a number of staff and also faculty and student staff like resident advisors who are there ready, willing, and eager to assist in that fostering and facilitating of interactions with others. It may be difficult to tell because I'm doing so much talking tonight, but I'm actually naturally an introvert. So after this session, I'm going to have to go veg out and calm myself down a bit, right? But whether you're shy or you're anxious or you're a little nervous or you're hesitant to interact with others, I'm here to tell you that part of the magic about being on the college campus is the wealth of resources and activities. And I think one of the best things you can do for your student, grad or undergrad, is simply ask questions, open-ended. Now, the reason I say open-ended is because it is not always helpful to ask your student, have you done XYZ that I told you to do? Like, did you go attend that program? But if you were to ask an open-ended question, a non-yes, no question, such as, how did you spend your time over the weekend? Open-ended, and then this is the hardest part, stop talking, wait, listen. Because through that listening, you will gain clues as to how to actually support them, as only you know how as their family member. One of the worst things that I think caring individuals can do is stepping in too quickly. And I, even though I'm trained as a counselor, that's one of the things I have to work on all the time. When someone comes to me, a student comes to me, and I have 18,000 solutions for them, and I can't wait to tell them all. Sit back, simply say, how are you, how are you doing in the residence halls? And then stop talking, listen. You will find the clues in how to support that student in only you know how. And then propel them forward with encouragement. It takes time to come out of one's shell. It also takes time to build lifelong relationships. And so know that your student has time, whether it is a semester or a year or 2 years, or if you're a doctoral student, 6 or 7 years like me. It does take time and patience, but support, open questions, and also point them to resources. So you can say, oh, what resources have you considered, right? Open-ended. And in my experience, that will help propel the student forward in a way that helps them grow. And it will also minimize the talk to the hand. You don't have to tell me advice, right? Often what happens is students in college, they don't want to hear too much advice. So that's what I have found to be a very helpful way to get students to come out of their shell. And maybe one other piece of advice, Karen, I would say is, in my experience, every time I've asked students and families to take a chance to go to a program or reach out to someone, 99 times out of 100, they feel so much better because they've taken that chance. So give AU a chance. We're here to prove you right, that you've selected the right place.
Oh, thanks, Raymond. I mean, I think that's really solid advisement. Some of the families here know that I'm a proud double eagle. So I have 2 AU degrees. I've been around this campus for a long time. And I can say that it was like those student involvement opportunities that I sought and sometimes that I helped to create. And we came up with whole new events and clubs and traditions as a group of just bright-eyed folks who thought that we could do anything in 2 weeks lead time. But that really defined who I became, right? Who I'm becoming and the friends that I've made over time. I think too, I often hear, exasperation or frustration from students or parents that it feels like students haven't immediately found their thing, right? Like they arrived 6 weeks ago and they came from very active involvements like in their previous school. And so they're used to being super involved in clubs and leading clubs and knowing where they fit, and feeling secure in that placement. And so there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air in these first handful of weeks, and they've got a long time ahead to figure it out. I also love to stress anytime I get to chime in about belonging and engagement, that on this campus, it's so much more than just clubs. Right? Because some students are reticent, especially that first year, they feel like if they sign up or join a club that they're committing to something that they're not sure they're ready for. But this campus has a whole rich range, whether it's fraternities or sororities for students after their first semester, or dipping their toes into some of the performing arts opportunities, or intramural sports, or just forming a study group. And I often kind of try to remind folks that our students are being introduced. They do know lots of people. They know who their orientation leader is. They know who their RA is. They've got some of these. And they're also in class every day with students that they have something in common with because they're all in the same class. And I have 2 college-age students of my own, and I've had to turn to one in particular who's got some unexpected time home to say well, so maybe after that class is over, if you're not sure what that assignment was, you should just turn to one of your brand new friends and say, hey, was there an assignment that was missed? And it's just that easy, right? But how do we help break that ice? So thank you, Raymond, for that. You also had mentioned earlier when we were talking about the sort of care support network, and you referenced in particular the care reports. And I want to just share and invite families if they've got other questions, but to say to families here, if you have a concern about your student, Camille and I are where you can turn, and we can submit a care report on your behalf as an extension of the AU community. And Camille and I work with all the folks in that care network to try to make sure that your concerns are being related to the larger team. So that's one definite strategy. But Raymond, I wanted to ask, sometimes it's hard, I think, as a parent, when you hear that distress call from your student to figure out, okay, when do they need me to step in here? When is it appropriate? And when should I kind of step back? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. There is no one right answer to that question, which is what I love about the field, is the ambiguity of when to step in. What I would say is that, again, you know your student probably better than anyone else. What I would say is give them time to have the experiences that they have. And what I often will also encourage both the family member and the student member to set up is, let's just set up a informed way in which we would signal to one another when to check in. One of the things that in fact, parents, I hope your students took me up on this, because when I did the Eagle Summit and and EDC, different events, one of the things that I did was it was because I did want my mother to know what I was doing, but I actually took a selfie with all of your students in the background. And one of the things that I said was, I'm reminding all of you to also call home and text, because I know what can happen is you may never hear your student. So, so we try to instill that. So what I would say, Karen, is it's important as a parent and a loved one for you to set up a system, whether it is a regular check-in text or phone call daily or weekly, or or using FaceTime, and also to have the conversation openly. When I don't hear from you, or when we have a conversation and I sense that something is not going well, what are some of the ways in which we can actually unpack that? Is to speak openly about that. It's important to know that it is okay to say to your student, I sense that not everything is going well. Can we just have a conversation? Because sometimes that way is the best way to clear the air a bit, rather than figure out, okay, should I reach out right at this moment or right after their class? Or should I just not say anything because I don't want to become that parent, whatever that means. I think it is okay when your gut tells you something doesn't feel quite right to reach out in some way. Again, be mindful that your student is doing many different things. So be mindful of that. And also, sometimes you may not have heard from your student for longer than what is normal for your student. That is when it's important that rather than be concerned about whether you should reach out, you should reach out if you're that worried. And also, depending on the situation, don't be embarrassed to reach out to us, because we are all going into this together, many of us going into the first semester at AU together. For some of you on the webinar, you've had your student here as a graduate student or returning student, so you know the rhythms a little better. So for those of you who are first-time AU family members, you may not have gone through the whole year, so you may not be able to read some of the cycles as well as a returning family member. So all the more reason, reach out, ask those questions, and always lead with you're simply concerned and you want to make sure that you support your student. So that's what I would lead with, rather than spending excessive amounts of time and energy thinking, when is the perfect time to reach out and should I reach out? So that's the that I would give.
Thanks, Raymond. I appreciate it. In the meantime, we've heard from Amy, who was asking if we could help point her to a direction of where she can go with her questions. And I just want to share with all families out loud here, you can always send an email to us at auparent@american.edu, and we will work to make sure your email reaches the right folks. We've got a system that helps make sure that we're doing all we can to get you an answer. So I'm going to encourage you again, it's auparent@american.edu. It's the same email that you're receiving your invitation for events like tonight's webinar from. Erin also thought to drop us a really lovely note in chat, sharing that she had a great and very positive experience during move-in and found AU folks to be very nice and supportive. And she had a tip that I think is worth sharing with all the families in terms of trying to make connections and find friends. She says her daughter keeps her door open. I'm sure that's while she's in the room, and just sort of randomly will call out to say hi, and it kind of creates an inviting space for people to drop by, poke their head in as they see her open door on the hallway. And I do think that's an important step COVID has a lot of us sitting behind closed doors and in closed rooms. So we're all trying to relearn what this means, right? To be social with each other again. Now here's another great question for you, Raymond. I don't want to mispronounce this. I think it's pronounced May. Who's sharing an experience that is common to a lot of our students, I think. You know, that AU certainly has this larger than life reputation for a focus in international and public affairs, right? Now, some of us who live in Washington, D.C. know that there's a slogan here in the Inside the Beltway. If you don't get it, you don't get it. Like, life inside the Beltway is different. But how do students who are not passionate about politics and international affairs, how do they find their fit? And like, how do they navigate this on campus? What's the scenario really like? And Raymond, since you're relatively new to campus, you probably have some great perspectives.
I hope so, Karen. I don't know if it's great perspectives, but it's certainly informed by what I have observed and also what students have shared with me and how I've counseled students. It's very interesting because every place that I've worked at, that university has its reputation for what they're known for. For example, when I was at Brandeis is a big powerhouse in the sciences. So every student there assumed that every other student is a pre-med major, whereas that's not the case. And when I was at Yale College, one of the things was, every student had to be good at everything. So you had to be, you already have written your own patents, and you also have to have won a scholarship to go to Juilliard, but you chose not to. So there's different reputation. What I would say is what makes AU rich, university environment rich, is that despite what the perceptions are, we do have a diverse community. And what's important is we have various professional schools, and it is because we want your student to explore those opportunities that they may not otherwise have the opportunity to. That is actually why they're here. And so whether they want to be a music major or they want to major something in the liberal arts and not STEM, there are plenty of opportunities to do that. And not every student gets an internship at Capitol Hill, or they want one. And that's another misconception. Now, many of our students do, and they can go to the Career Center or go to a co-op workshop. There are plenty of opportunities there. But part of being an AU student is to not feel compelled to conform because you feel like this is the reputation of the school. And that's what you need to do to be a change maker. In fact, with change management, one of the best things that you can do is really know yourself and what your passions are. And that includes the social events you have, the intramural sports you're involved in. Maybe you have a student job, in academic affairs that blossoms into something else. But rather than thinking that you have to fit the archetype of what an AU student is, know that the AU student is someone who can explore those opportunities outside of their immediate circle and outside of their immediate academic comfort as well. That's truly the essence of a liberal arts education. And so whether you are in a doctoral program or a master's level program or undergraduate program, know that part of the exploration is the excitement. And no, you don't have to do what your PI says that that's the only thing you can do in your field. It is okay to explore, and it can also be very exciting as well. So that's the advice that I would give.
That's so great. Thank you. We've got time for a few more questions, so I want to invite folks to drop their questions in the chat, and we've got some announcements at the very end. But Raymond, to kind of continue with this thread, you were just kind of talking about some of the things that you find distinguishing about AU. I'm just kind of curious if you can share with folks what really drew you to this position. Like, why you've worked at some pretty impressive places. What made you excited to come to this place now?
Thank you. And I promise everyone, the president isn't listening in the corner of my room because I want to be able to answer very candidly. Truly, it's the people. And not to make everyone uncomfortable here, but Karen, I remember when I first arrived and I met you and your team, and I remember talking to Julia and Camille the first time. it truly is the people that makes this place very special. Meaning that we're always aiming to be better. Even when we achieve excellence, it's not quite good enough. We have this perfectionism to a fault. We also have the quirks of being a community. So there are some things that until, for example, I often joke that until you walk through MGC and find my office, that really is sort of a trial in that, because it's quirky how the buildings work. I love the fact that, Karen, AU is unique. Folks are genuinely kind and opinionated and desperately want to make AU and the rest of the world better. And we also know that the answer lies in how we work together. And because I sense that in both the staff, faculty, and the student body, who, by the way, grilled me at my interview, and I loved it, and they're still around, I'm still talking to them. That's what drew me here, because it is very important to me to be in an environment that celebrates those values that truly support change makers. So that's what drew me here. People are fun, they're colorful, they're interesting, and they're challenging in the best way. So that's what drew me here.
I think you're tapping into something, Raymond. I think that's why so many of us have stayed or come back here. So I would say about the same. I want to go back for just a second to this question about the finding your fit in a school like AU here. And just to kind of illustrate, although our Model UN is award-winning, and we love to brag about that as a club, some of the other most popular clubs on campus, like if you came by a gaming club meeting, it takes up 2 of our largest meeting spaces at the same time in the Mary Graydon Center. I also had the chance to drop in on the first meeting for our beekeepers group. And it was standing room only. So there's so many things across such a broad range of interests, like whether it's cultural and affinity or performing or all these other things. So I really do think for students who want to see themselves here, they absolutely will find themselves their solid place.
And actually, Karen, I know those students you're talking about, because I met the beekeeping group while they had their little table in MGC, and I was fascinated because they had honeycombs there, and they had jars of honey, and I was like, what is that? And so I went over, and then I was looking around, and then they said, oh, you can touch the honeycomb or whatever. And then I learned all about their group, and it was fascinating, it was exciting, and they were so eager to talk to me about it. And I thought, this is what it's like. I never met these students before in my life, but they were so easy to talk to. And embraced me and said, oh yeah, as a staff member, you can come anytime to a meeting. And I thought, this is why, this place resonates with me. So absolutely.
Oh, like I've been trying to find time in my schedule to go get trained up to go volunteer, because I just think it's so cool. But kind of to your point about looking for those opportunities where you can grow because you've been pushed a little out of your comfort zone. Because I'm gonna tell you, when there's a bee in my house or my yard, I am not trying to get to know it. But the thought that like I might get to like dawn up and know some things about how bees work feels like a really cool new skill that I wouldn't otherwise be introduced to, and a fun way to meet people that I might not otherwise know how to strike up conversation with. So watch out, because I'll be out there in a hot minute. Families, we're going to give you a couple more minutes here if you wanted to add any questions, but I do want to tee up Camille to share with us reminders about what's happening this weekend.
Yes, I wanted to share our parent and family engagement slide, just to let you know all of the things that we offer you all. You can follow us on our parent and family Facebook page, American U Parents. We also have a family update newsletter that we send 1 to 2 times a month. And then of course, Family Weekend. I'm dropping the link in the chat for everyone now. So to say, it is not too late to register. We welcome you, and we are very excited to be holding that this weekend. We have a jam-packed schedule of events, and we really wanted to make sure that we had a good variety of ways for our families to get engaged and participate with the campus. So we are looking forward to welcoming you and Yes, one more thing I wanted to note, we will continue to be doing our webinar series throughout the semester and into the spring as well. We will have our recording posted on our website just as soon as it's available for you. We have dedicated staff, so Karen, myself, Amanda Dowd, Amy Neal, and again, as Karen mentioned, if there are any questions, any concerns, please reach out to us at auparent@american.edu. Karen, please jump in if I forgot anything.
I just wanted to highlight some things because I believe we've probably got some families joining us tonight who are not going to be able to join us in person this weekend. And there's two things in particular that I want to point out, maybe three. The one, your students will be in good company. Not every student has family members who are able to travel for the weekend. We've got a whole slew of activities on the schedule for this weekend that your students are warmly invited to participate in, and they won't be made to feel weird that they don't have a mom or a dad or a grandfather with them or what have you. Some of you may have heard some of the buzz about the Flow Rida concert, for instance, and so we've got a lot of students excited about coming out for that. Two, for those who are not able to join us in person, I also want to share that we have now just added to our website, which you can see on the screen. We now have a link so that you can join us for our panel on Saturday evening with live stream. So you don't have to be left out. You can just sit on your couch if you'd like, and you're not with us, and join us. It's really exciting. MSNBC host Jen Psaki, former White House spokesperson, will be moderating a panel where we're having a really fascinating conversation about the future of what does the new American dream look like, as informed by young adults like your own. So it should be a really thought-provoking evening. We're very excited. And lastly, again, if you're not able to join us, or even if you are, we've offered this year for the first time this fun gift for students from their families. It's a Stuff-A-Plush. It's an adorable eagle wearing a little AU t-shirt, and you can stuff your own message inside. Now, families who are joining us and have already ordered this, you'll pick them up when you see us at check-in. You can still order them on site. We have a limited number available. I'm not trying to make the plug here. Really, what I want to stress for our families who can't join us in person is you too can send some love if you'd like. You can just go in as if you're going to register for family weekend and just skip right to the part where you can purchase that Stuff-A-Plush, and Camille and I and our team will make sure your student gets that little squishy little eagle filled with your loving message for them, so they can feel like you were still thinking of them this weekend. There were some other questions that came up. We're asking if, folks asking about the weather forecast for this weekend. You know, I'm in denial straight up. We're watching it closely. We're not canceling any of our events with rain. If there's rain, we do have rain sites for all of our activities. So rest assured, there'll be plenty of fun for everyone. And then the question about how long our Saturday program with Jen Psaki will last. I believe we're expecting it to be about 90 minutes. It probably won't run much longer than that. I would say will be concluded certainly by 9 p.m. Somebody else had asked, I think, Raymond, they pitched the question in pre-registration, whether folks might be able to hear that Flow Rida concert from outside. I'm going to say your chances on that one are pretty nil. The Flow Rida concert in our Benta Arena, we're going to have the doors shut, and it's going to be loud but muffled. You'll probably miss out on the artistry that's happening on stage, and I'm sorry. But we'll have plenty of other activities for you throughout the rest of the weekend. So we certainly look forward to seeing you. I also see families asking questions, a great one. And I know, Raymond, that this is a big deal for you as a pet dad, that we've got folks asking, can they bring their animals? The details for lots of guest policies are outlined in your confirmation for family weekend, including the fact that your pets are welcomed when they're on leashes and they can be outside. Only service animals are allowed indoors with our current policy. You'll get that in writing. Just check your inbox. I want to take just a moment to thank again Julia, our captioner, Camille, and Raymond. Thank you for making time to visit and introduce yourselves to our new families. I think it's been a great evening, and we look forward to hearing from all of our families and from connecting with you throughout the whole year and in your students' entire journey with us here at AU. Good night.